CTV's Colton Praill is joining us now from Ottawa for more on this. Good morning, Colton. Take us through the latest fires in Quebec and Labrador.
Yeah, Renee, as you mentioned, this is a situation where residents are really waiting to find out. In both cases, there are out-of-control wildfires just outside of the towns. We've seen evacuations, as you mentioned, of 1,000 people in Quebec, of 500 people in Newfoundland and Labrador. Really, the challenge right now that firefighters are facing is the weather. It hasn't cooperated. It's been impacting their ability to fight these blazes effectively. And especially in the case of the fire in Newfoundland and Labrador, we're in a situation now where while the evacuation order is in place until Wednesday, residents there are being told it could actually be much, much longer before they're allowed back into town. Additional concerns there is that there's a large power station which has to be monitored and has to continue operations throughout all of this. The good news is this fire, both fires impacting this town, are for the most part not expected to actually make their way into town. The one is being held about 15 kilometers away. It hasn't crossed the Churchill River. Another much closer and out of control, but thankfully growing in the opposite direction. And so officials say while there is significant concern over how they can fight these fires, the impacts of the weather, the ability to bring in water bombers, they are also hopeful that it will not make its way, that they'll be able to continue the operations of the power plants, and that while it might be some time before residents are allowed back, the good news is there's not expected to be significant damage to property and homes in this town where the entirety of it has been evacuated. It's a similar story in Quebec. Evacuations on one side of the town, questions about how long that will last. Right now, that evacuation order in place until Tuesday, although there is some talk that it could be extended. It's unlikely at this point. And again, these out-of-control wildfires, luckily about 15 kilometers away from the town and moving in the opposite direction.
Colton, how did these wildfires start, and can we expect more of the same this summer?
Yeah, in the case of Quebec, it was a lightning strike that happened. But really what we've seen this year, and the reason why we can expect more wildfires, especially what we saw this spring, was the number of, they're called zombie fires or dormant fires. And what happens is it's burning from the year before. And because we had such a mild winter with such little precipitation, these fires essentially smolder all winter long, and come spring, come summer, the high winds, the high temperatures, they reignite and they start these fires. On top of that, you have massive heat concerns. Last year, we saw one of the worst, if not the worst, wildfire season on record. 6,500 fires, 18 million hectares burnt down. And the warning that we got this spring was that 2024 was expected to be worse, not better. And the reason for that is the temperatures. We've seen in the last 12 months or so record-breaking temperatures around the world. The first time that the European Weather Agency has tracked 12 consecutive months of record-breaking heat. And the result of that heat is really intense fire conditions. Right now, across the country, we're looking at above average fire severity forecasts in pretty much the entire country. In eastern Alberta, all the way through to the Atlantic provinces, including the Northwest Territories, as you showed earlier, there is an above-average risk of wildfires, and especially on that Saskatchewan-Manitoba border and into northern Manitoba, it is well above average. And so we are expecting it to be quite a severe wildfire season, and that's something that Canadians are really just going to have to get used to and start expecting more frequently as we deal with these warmer springs, these warmer summers, and really a lot of concern around drought in the winter like we've seen in British Columbia over the past 3 years or so.
All right. CTV's Colton Praill. Thanks for this, Colton.
Anytime.